Welcome, I'm Martina, your trusty guide through the pages of Camp Half-Blood and beyond. Grab your camp shirts, ready your weapons, and let's embark on this epic adventure together. This is Delphi Dispatches. This is the first episode I'm recording in the new year, and I have to say, the year started out great. We got a really good episode in the new year, and my Christmas present to myself arrived, which is a mixer for the podcast. So I hope the sound quality will improve over the next few weeks, and I'm doing my best with editing and everything. Let's get right into the Delphi Dispatches news part, and this time it's not that big, I would say. Maybe because over the holidays there were not a lot of news to be shared. The first one I have is from the 27th of December. There, Rick talked about his cameo in episode 3. I told you there was some cameo I just didn't see. He told us that himself and Becky got statues made of themselves, which were like in Medusa's lair. He thought we couldn't see him, but we could. Like there's one shot when Medusa is walking where you see him, and another shot is when Grover crashes down. He crashes into his statue. So Grover crashes into Rick as the statue. And yeah, Rick is a mailman. If you see it, it looks amazing. The day after that, he posted about Chiron's leg brace because there were a lot of questions online, and I love how they included it because it's like straight from mythology. In some myths, Chiron was accidentally shot by a poisonous arrow from Heracles, and since he was immortal, he couldn't die, but since then he had like chronic pain and stuff. So this is a really good way to incorporate this mythical aspect into the modern world. And this is also a reason why human Chiron, so Mr. Brunner, is in a wheelchair. And on New Year's Eve, we got the confirmation that the Poseidon flashback, so probably the Poseidon Sally backstory flashback, will be in episode 7. I'm really looking forward to this. Now let's look at a few of the social media highlights of the past week. We got the poster for episode 3. Here we have our trio. It's Percy in the middle with his sword, Grover on one side with the box where they put Medusa's head in later, and Annabeth on the other side. In the upper right corner we see Medusa, and in the upper left corner we see one of the monsters that has been turned to stone. I don't know if this is foreshadowing for we're gonna meet this kind of monster anytime soon, and I couldn't really pick out what monster they were referring to with this statue. Then we got a TikTok about the previews that happened for the first 2 episodes all over the US. It was like fans chanting Percy, Percy, Percy everywhere, and they showed a clip from Boston where Rick and Becky surprised the guests, and they also showed a clip from LA where the showrunners and the cast surprised the people. And then there were a lot of fan reactions to the first 2 episodes and how they were all really excited, which after seeing the first 4 episodes, I totally get that. Then there was this video from the trio talking about the guest stars they had on so far. They told a few funny stories, for example, about Glenn Turman, who plays Chiron, that in the scene where Chiron announces who will join Percy on the quest, he has to say the first quest companion will be Annabeth Chase, and he kind of forgot Annabeth's name a lot of times, so he said Annabelle, Anna something, and I'm just imagining myself standing there and this grown man not remembering the name Annabeth, which is interesting. I mean, if it would have been Mr. D, it would have been of course he doesn't remember the name. That's part of Mr. D. But Chiron, and with some more takes, they fixed it. Then they talked about Jessica Parker Kennedy as Medusa, and that Leah fangirled over her after she already left, because that's when she found out that Jessica Parker Kennedy was also in another Cinderella story, the movie with Selena Gomez, and Leah just figured it out afterwards. And they also said that Megan Mullally is very funny, which I actually can't picture. I mean, yeah, of course they're actors, and in the movie she plays Alecto, aka Mrs. Dodds, who's quite serious and stern, and this person being funny is just weird to me. Then we got a few new pictures from episode 3, including the oracle. Here I zoomed in and looked at the necklaces. Like I said, if you read the books, you know why I'm interested in the necklaces. And one of them looked like a necklace we could expect playing a bigger role in the future. Another picture was Luke and Percy in the moment where Luke gives Percy the flying shoes. And it's just like, that's like brotherhood, that's friendship. I really love it. And they look so happy. The next picture is of Annabeth with her thinking face. I mean, for Annabeth, probably every face is her thinking face. And the last picture was of Medusa, where you can see like the snakes a bit better, and they just look amazing. They look so good. Then we got the behind the scenes of the statue making process with the example of Rick as the postman. Like he said in his post on Threads, he got statuified. They took like a 360 picture and then 3D-printed a life-size version of this picture, and then carved it out of styrofoam. And then they circulated these 3 videos of people slapping Walker. I think I first saw it on the Instagram page of Andrew Alvarez, and it's kind of set up the same it was when they filmed on location at camp. And Walker is getting slapped by Andrew, Charlie, and Dior. So basically the older campers at camp. And I'm just wondering why. But I have no idea. And was it real or fake? I have also no idea. Regardless, it seems Walker wants to be an action star so bad he is getting slapped on every film he's working on, whether it be on camera or not. If you think to the Adam Project, he also got bullied and slapped by some dudes, so is this a theme for Walker? Probably. But of course it was just all in good fun. And the caption says no demigods were hurt in the making of this video, I think, so all good. Then we got the Demigod Diaries for episode 3, where Leah is like pretending to wanting to box a replica of Medusa's head and getting turned into stone in air quotes. Then we get Leah talking about working with Walker and Arian, that they became friends really quickly. And then we get to Arian, like while he's in hair and makeup, they're like actively working on him, make him look like Grover. And he's talking about working with these phenomenal guest star actors who just bring out the best in the younger actors. We also get to see Jessica Parker Kennedy with like a motion capture head instead of the snakes, because of course CGI, and it looks kind of funny if you ask me. I have no idea how that works, if there are like some sensors in there or if it's just like, I don't know how motion capturing works, but it looks funny when there's like no CGI added to it yet. Another thing I wanted to address, this didn't really fall into news parts or the social media highlights, is that people are dunking on Lin-Manuel Miranda as Hermes. Like, I have heard a lot of mixed reactions, either you love it or you hate it. I'm like, why are you guys hating on Lin-Manuel Miranda? Yeah, I know most people know him from Hamilton and don't want him to start singing, which I'm also like, singing is great, singing makes everything better, but I understand that you don't want Hermes to start singing randomly. But I also have to say, we know Lin is a really good actor. I mean, best examples, Mary Poppins Returns, yes, this is a musical, but we also have his Dark Materials. This is not a musical as far as I know. And the things I've seen from this show, because I haven't watched it all, it looks great, especially his acting, so we know he can play this role. And I mean, guys, his smirk at the end before he gets out of the elevator, that's just screaming Hermes to me, this mischievous look. He's the trickster god, of course he's gonna be mischievous. And now for our updates on season 2. There are none. There's still no updates if we get another season, but we're still optimistic. And I think with all the news we've gotten in the last few weeks, it's looking very good. Now our last part of the news segment, it's our Rotten Tomato scores! Yay! And I'm very happy because we're still at 96% on the tomato meter and still certified fresh. We have 54 fresh reviews from the critics and 2 rotten ones. And on the audience side, we have an average audience score of 85% with over 1,000 reviews. So that also screams a thumbs up for season 2. So Disney, get on it. Probably they already like greenlit it internally and just waiting until the last episode to air when they're gonna announce it that it has been greenlit. Maybe what they're doing is they're there's gonna be the making of documentary. Maybe they're gonna, like, at the end, they'll say Percy Jackson will return in season 2 or something. That would be awesome. Like, you know, they do in Marvel movies and stuff, when they say so-and-so will return. So I'm optimistic. But now, let's get on to our Demigod discussions of episode 4. Episode 4 is called I Plunge to My Death. And this, of the 4 we got so far, the shortest one, with a total runtime of 33 minutes, which includes like the recap and the credits at the end. So the episode itself would be around 27 to 28 minutes, I think. So yeah, short, but we know the target audience are middle schoolers, so I'd say appropriate length for them. And also, since this is episode 4, this means half of the first season is already out. Only 4 more episodes of the first season, but I think those 4 episodes will be epic. But let's start with the recap of this episode. We start out with a flashback where we see young Percy and Sally at some swimming lessons. And the first sentence we hear in this episode is, "You have to let go, Percy," which is like a really good analogy for letting go of Sally or letting go of the arch at the end of this episode. And we also learned that Percy doesn't want to or is afraid. And this is where we see Sally's frustrated single mom come out, where she just says that they already paid for these classes, and which would hint at some money struggles, which I think were established in the books but didn't really seem that severe in the first episode. And while Sally is convincing Percy to like try and not stand in the same position for 15 minutes, she's getting like dirty looks from other parents, where I'm thinking of like, mind your own business and leave Sally alone. Sally tells Percy that it is dangerous if he doesn't know how to do this, and that someday when he needs to, Sally maybe won't be there for him. And she gets like frustrated, and Percy just says, "Breathe, mommy, breathe." And this is like a parallel we see of Percy telling Sally to breathe at the beginning of the episode, and then at the end in the river where Percy gets told the same thing, that he should breathe. But then suddenly Percy, still small Percy, is back in this desert-looking place which we've seen once before when he was sitting at this campfire. And we also hear this figure again, and this time it's gotten closer, and the ground crumbles away again, and we find out it's another dream. And Percy wakes up, but he doesn't wake up just anywhere. He wakes up in a train cabin with Grover and Annabeth on the other beds. And they're like stacked basically. Percy is at the lowest bed, Annabeth in the middle one, and Grover at the one at the top. And this, I could see it like their connection to mythology. Percy is like so new to mythology and the mythological world. He's at the bottom. Annabeth has been immersed for the past 7+ years. And Grover, he's literally a mythical being. And he's like on the top. Speaking of Grover, he's fast asleep and we hear him like snoring a bit. Like, Grover, get your beauty sleep. You deserve it. And Percy just asks, in the void, I guess, "You asleep?" And we hear a simple yes back from Annabeth. Then we have this little Percy and Annabeth talk. They talk about Thalia and how when Luke and Thalia found Annabeth, Luke like immediately cared for Annabeth, but Thalia made her earn it. And Percy asks if that's why Annabeth is like cold to him, if he has to earn her trust too. And Annabeth doesn't really say yes right out. Even though we know she could, she kinda, maybe's it. Then we get this like a monologue from Percy that he doesn't understand how the gods work, and it doesn't make sense how they treat them, and that they only listen to the children who make offerings and stuff. And we also get a little bit more of Annabeth's backstory, where she tells us that she was meant as a gift to her father from Athena. The children of Athena are just born from a thought and gifted to the person she favors. So they're literally mind babies. And that Annabeth's father cared for her like she was a gift at first. But then along came another woman. And she and Annabeth's dad had kids, and she was no longer a gift but a problem. So she left her home when she was 7. That's when Luke and Thalia found her. And then Grover wakes up, is quite grouchy and very hungry. So Grover and I are the same when we wake up. Don't talk to me until I had something to eat. Then we have this morning shot of the train just going through the countryside, and out of basically nowhere, this figure slams into the side of the car and breaks a window, but that's all we see of it. Nothing really happens. And we cut to the trio in the dining car eating breakfast. This is where we learn that they will be in LA in 2 days if they stay on the train. And then Percy says, and I quote, "Can I ask a dumb question?" And Annabeth and me, the same thought. She says, "It's like you want me to make fun of you." His question is not that dumb. He wants to know how they know where to go in LA, because LA is a big city. And Grover said, "We'll cross that bridge when we get there." I'm like, same. I'm also not that far ahead in my plans, because I travel a lot solo, and I only plan arriving where I'm staying when I'm leaving, and if there's something specific I want to do. For example, in November I went to Norway. The only thing I planned ahead was this train ride I went on, where actually the idea of this podcast was born, and it was a train ride through the Norwegian mountains, and all of the other things I planned around on location. But back to Percy. Then Percy brings up the last line of the prophecy again, that he shall fail to save what matters most in the end. But they kind of get sidetracked when Percy sees 4 centaurs running outside the train, basically not really along the train on purpose. They're just running through the fields where they're at, through the wilderness. And Percy wonders how the humans can't see them, and we get the information that there used to be herds of them, and then humans happened. With every good thing, humans happened. Now we get a little of Grover backstory / actually Pan backstory. We find out that a few thousand years ago, the god of the wild, Pan, disappeared, and ever since then the humans chipped away at all the natural world. All the bravest sailors volunteer to become searchers to find Pan once more, but no one has ever returned. Grover's Uncle Ferdinand we saw turn to stone at Medusa's. And we kind of get a little hint at Grover wanting to do the same, not turning to stone, but becoming a searcher. And we get back on the prophecy track. Annabeth just clarifies that the last line could mean a lot of things. That's how fate works. If you try to understand it, it just gets harder and more complicated. They get interrupted when a policeman wants to see their tickets. I'm like, is it normal for the US that they have policemen check your tickets? But no, we find out in a few seconds why it was a policeman. They get escorted to their cabin, which is totally wrecked and destroyed. They assure the policeman that everything was fine when they left, but according to the police, they have a witness. But Annabeth, knowing very well what to do in such situations, just asks, "Are we under arrest?" And in retaliation, the policeman calls Annabeth little girl, and I'm like, "Oh no, you don't." And she asks again. She doesn't get angry, she just looks at him angrily. "Are we under arrest?" And apparently they are, because in the next scene we cut back to the dining car with them again at a table, and basically them being watched by this police person. We hear an announcement over the announcement system that they will be arriving in St. Louis Gateway Station in 10 minutes, which will play an important part. You'll see why later. Percy just wants to confirm with the others that they're just stalling to find out that the policeman is actually some sort of monster. I think he refers to him as probably a werewolf. But Annabeth doesn't think that the policeman is a monster, and Grover says it's hard to say, and it seemed like that someone was looking for something. I mean, a lot of people think Percy has the Master Bolt, so of course they would be looking for something. Then this woman, who is apparently the witness, comes up to them and sits with them. She also has this little bag with a dog inside. It's one of those bags where you don't actually see the dog, but you can definitely hear it because it's growling and rattling. So there's something inside, all right. And this person is none other than Susan Cryer. And she asks them if they have no parents or no parents with them. and tells them that she is a mom too and that they must be scared. Then she sends away the policewoman that was like watching them. She's kind of trying to make them trust her, but also not. And she's talking, but Grover interrupts her when he notices glass on her jacket. And he points out that the window was smashed in from the outside inward. The dog in the back gets like even more squirmy. And the mother, as I'm gonna call her from now on until we learn her name, tries to comfort it. And when she's like talking to the dog, she smells the air. And I'm like, does she smell fear? Because apparently it's not just bees that smell fear. She tells the three that they must bear the burden of their parents' mistakes now. And Percy, being sassy as he always is, mentions that they killed a few monsters like her already. And here we have her say something, I'm just gonna quote it. Monsters like me? Of course they were like me. They were my children. And this is where we learn that Mother is the mother, capital Mother all the way, the mother of monsters, aka Echidna. And no, I'm not talking about this little cute animal from Australia, I'm talking about her, Echidna, mother of all monsters. And here we get like this villain monologue kind of thing where she says monsters is an odd word and that it's always been a family story because Echidna's grandmother is the great-grandmother of Percy and the great-great-grandmother of Annabeth in that case. It's Gaia if you haven't like caught up to that, if you don't know the complicated family tree of Greek gods and goddesses. She's referring to Gaia. But she also says that the demigod is the most dangerous creature, and this makes us question again what a monster really is. Like with Medusa, they had her like her take on what a monster is. Now we get the side of a mother, and for the part of the demigod is the most dangerous creature, this sounds like something in the nature documentary, like, and here we see the demigod, the most dangerous creature in the world. Something like that. She turns to a bag and says she's just a pup and that they will be her prey for today. She asks them if they're afraid yet. Here again my theory. This creature smells fear. Grover said bees. I don't think that's bees in there, Grover. We see Annabeth reaching for her dagger and Echidna saying to them, you should run now. And the bag opens by itself and no dog comes out. No, just a huge stinger. Stinging Percy like in the chest. I think it was right above the heart. Nice! So much for chasing them. Just attack them right away. Great. But Annabeth springs into action and lunges for the stinger and stabs it with her dagger. Rightfully wounded, the creature pulls the stinger back into the bag and Echidna tries to comfort/reprimand kind of the creature. And as the kids run away, the police follow them because of course these mortals have not seen anything wrong. They just see like 3 fugitives probably running away. As they're running through the different like wagons of the train, I think it's called a wagon, Annabeth locks one of the doors behind her and kind of locks the police in with the creature. And here we see that the creature is like actively bending the metal of the train. This is one of those instances where I really want to know what the mortals see. We get a little sneak peek of how the creature looks to mortals. It's just a chihuahua. So I want to know what they think bended the metal of the train. So they either arrived at this train station or they're like stopping because the train is actively like warping. The trio like gets off the train somehow and run over the train tracks away from the train. And I think the reason is because the creature is still young according to Echidna and it won't venture too far away from the mother. As they walk through the city in search of a safe place, Annabeth says she knows a sanctuary for Athena, built by one of her demigod children. And in this shot, I realize that they don't have like any luggage anymore. Earlier they all had their backpacks. Now only Annabeth has her bag across her shoulders. So they lost a lot of equipment. On their way to the sanctuary, she says it's not very hidden, and in like the reflection of this puddle, we see the St. Louis Gateway Arch. I don't know what's the official title, if it's just Gateway Arch or just the Arch. We're gonna call it the Arch for the rest of this episode. And this is where we get a glimpse of Architect Corner with Annabeth, the residential architect nerd. And the last thing she says about, well, in this Architect Corner part, is that the arch is earthquake-proof, so Poseidon can't ruin it. Which I was like, yeah, that's something an Athena child would do just to spite Poseidon. And then Annabeth says, "This is how you show Athena your love, a monument to her power of perfection." And Grover just says it's a monument of some other stuff too. And this is where we get like a shot of I think it's the visitor center, which like strongly hints at how humans have killed a lot of animals. But Annabeth says, like to respond to Grover's like looks, that this is what some humans want this arch to be about, but it is really about like honoring Athena. She says that they're safe here and that no monster can enter, not even Echidna. And Grover is on his way to see if they can get some tickets to another train since theirs kind of blew up. And then we get a shot of this sign that says Manifest Destiny. And Grover says, just because we're prey doesn't mean we need to be helpless. And I looked up at the meaning of Manifest Destiny because I've heard it a lot, but I really don't know the significance of it. So I'm just gonna read what comes up if I search Manifest Destiny meaning. It's Manifest Destiny was the idea that white Americans were divinely ordained to settle the entire continent of North America. The ideology of Manifest Destiny inspired a variety of measures designed to remove or destroy the native population. So if you haven't gathered, very bad. I'm on Grover with this. Now we get a little Annabeth and Percy one-on-one. They mention that Grover doesn't like it when people mess around with animals, which I totally agree with. The longer this series goes on, I'm identifying more and more with Grover. And Annabeth also feels bad for snapping at Grover, which is improvement on Annabeth's part. Yes, feelings, we love them. And Percy wonders if Athena is around since this is a place of worship for her. And Annabeth tries to reason why she thinks her mother cares for her, even if Percy doesn't believe her. And she also says a temple is a temple, that he should say hi to Poseidon and maybe ask for his help. But Percy doesn't want to. He doesn't want anything from Poseidon. He says, and I quote, "Honestly, you've done more for me in the past few days than my father has done for me my entire life. If I had to stick with someone..." And then Annabeth interrupts him and says, "Careful, I think you were about to call me a friend." Yes, Percybeth, I love it. Annabeth couldn't really finish her thought because Percy collapses. Because remember, he got stung by this creature, and apparently the creature is poisonous. So yay, Percy is actively dying. And since we know that water cured him back at camp, Annabeth and Grover place him into the fountain in front of the arch and splash him with water. But it doesn't really work now. Annabeth theorizes it only works with natural running water. And in the background we hear a car crash. It's not just a random car crash that occurred. No, it's Echidna. And they find out that they have to hurry and get to the altar and ask for help, which is a really big thing for Annabeth, because remember in the last episode where she didn't even want to ask for help from camp? Now she's wanting to go straight to her mom for help. We also see Echidna slowly villain walking towards them. And I'm like, wow, you have to be so confident just to slowly walk like that in the middle of this scene. Then we hear this weird whisper. We can't really hear what has been said, but we know that something has been said because Annabeth is asking the boys continuously if they heard that. But before they get to talking about what she heard, they get into the tram that takes people up the arch. And as someone who's not been to the Gateway Arch, this tram looks really like a space capsule kind of thing. And it's really small. The only trams I know are in Europe where when you go up a hill to a castle or something, and they have these trams, and they're really big. Well, not really big, but bigger than this. But just before the door of the tram closes, they see Echidna and a menacing shadow. They're wondering how they got inside. Annabeth reveals what Echidna said to her, that her impertinence wounded Athena's pride, and that this will be her doom. And Percy's like, you didn't do anything wrong. I was the one who sent Medusa's head. This means that Athena's not going to help them. And this is the first time Annabeth is doesn't have a step further. Normally Annabeth is 6 steps ahead, as we know. This time she doesn't know how to continue. So she kind of takes charge. And if Athena is not going to protect them, they must fight for themselves. As soon as they arrive at the top of the arch, they see there are a lot of people. And of course they want to protect those people as well. And Annabeth, best idea ever, works in every movie. And also here, she pulls the fire alarm. And is yes, classic. Annabeth wants the boys to go with all the other people and stay behind herself and fight the Chimera and Echidna alone and give the boys a chance to make it to LA. As they're half in the stairwell, Percy's wait, and pretends to give her Riptide, but tricks her into switching places with him and locks Annabeth and Grover in the stairwell and wants them to continue the quest, because he's poisoned and probably would not survive until they got to the underworld. And there he says, Poseidon has never helped me before, he wasn't gonna start now. And now we have an Echidna and Chimera versus Percy Jackson standoff. The Chimera is in Greek mythology. It's this goat-lion-snake hybrid. Most of the times it's depicted as the head and body of a lion. And out of the back there comes a goat head. And also the back itself is goat-ish. And the tail is a snake. Here it's a little bit different. It's mostly lionish in features, but has horns of a goat, has a stinger like a scorpion almost, and is covered in snake scales. And when we see it refired, it I don't know what it is called, but a lot of snakes have it if they're about to attack, they make their head kind of bigger. I think cobras are a good example of this. Yeah, that's how this Chimera looks. And mind you, all of this time, Percy looks sickly pale, and he's getting worse ever since he got stung, because he is actively getting poisoned and dying. So you really see it in his face, sunken eyes, sweaty. He's not looking good. Percy's first swing at the Chimera doesn't hit or can't pierce the snake skin of the Chimera, and he gets flung across the room and almost hit by fire breath, which almost charred him. Charred Percy for dinner for the Chimera. Not quite. He tries to crawl away, and Echidna just flicks her hand and a hole in the floor appears. And Percy goes for another swing at the Chimera. And yeah, he kind of loses Riptide in the process and falls through the hole. Well, he doesn't actually fall, at least not now. He's still holding on with the last of his strength, and Echidna is just taunting him, and Percy slowly loses his grip until he lets go and falls down, heading straight towards the ground. And while he's spinning, we're also spinning, the camera's also spinning. We see a view of the Mississippi River that's running by the arch, not under the arch. And there is this tentacle kind of thing, wave thing of water coming out of the Mississippi and basically pulling Percy into the river. So Poseidon saved the day, I guess. Especially if you take into consideration what comes next. Percy is underwater. It's not very clear, which I gathered since it is the Mississippi River, and his foot is stuck at the bottom of the river, and he can't swim to the surface, and he's holding his breath and trying to figure out what's going on. Speaking of figure out, there's a figure who appears, and it's this almost jellyfish-like apparition. It has this female voice, and if you have the captions on, it says Nereid, so we know it's a Nereid, which is in ancient Greek mythology this water spirit. And she tries to comfort him, tells him that she was sent by Poseidon, and she tells him, just breathe. And this is the parallel to Sally Jackson at the beginning of the episode I was talking about. Now I have this quote of her reassuring him of his father's love, I guess. She says, "Your father is here. He's always been here. It is so hard for him to stand back, to see you struggle. It is so hard for us all, but he is here, and he's so very proud. Through all of this, Percy is still struggling to free his foot, and his air is running out. And the Nereid just continues with, trust him, trust yourself, just breathe. And this is the moment where Percy Jackson discovers that he can breathe underwater. We end this episode with him just taking a breath underwater and not suffocating. I went on a roller coaster at this last part. But my feelings and thoughts later. We still have our sneak peeks at next episode. So we see Waterland, the Tunnel of Love. We see a Persebeth hug. We see a lot of Persebeth moments in this sneak peek. We see the fates. I'm talking about that in the predictions part. Just wait for it. We see this golden statue holding a shield with the boar's head, which is Ares' symbol. We see Percy sitting on a golden throne, being covered by these golden threads, it seems like. And Annabeth wanting him to stand up. Percy and Annabeth were jumping off this boat, and also there's also this wild ride. I think both of those scenes were in the Tunnel of Love, or at least in Waterland. The last scene is of Ares snapping his fingers and these transporter doors closing. And next to Ares, we see his classic motorcycle with the shield we saw earlier. So next episode is gonna be jam-packed. That's it for this episode, for the episode recap. Now let's get on with the predictions. See which predictions I got right last episode. We took the train to St. Louis. We saw the arch. Those two are check. Then we met Echidna on the train and she follows them to the arch, which is also a check. I said Annabeth and Grover would help fight in the train. Annabeth was actually the only one fighting, really, when she attacked the stinger of the Chimera in the train. So I'm giving this a meh on the okay to not okay scale. Then we have Percy fighting alone in the arch, check. Then he falls/jumps out of the arch. He fell, didn't really jump, into the river where he meets the Nereid. I'm not sure how to really pronounce this, so check on this as well. Some other things I'm having a meh is the Nereid telling him about the gifts and Santa Monica. This, I think, either will go one of two directions. One, we will open next episode with this. Two, we will get Percy telling his friends about this and getting kind of a flashback thing. Or actually, I have a third option. They just cut it. Yeah, let's see about that. And then the other thing I'm kind of annoyed by is the fates. Well, remember when I said every episode, oh yeah, we're gonna meet the fates, and then last episode I said either we're gonna meet the fates in episode 4 or in the last two episodes. Now they're gonna show up in episode 5. But from the looks of the picture we saw, it was the fates behind this yellow tape where it's police line do not cross. I think this is still in St. Louis because the arch exploded and they're sitting behind it. So I wasn't too far off. They're still in St. Louis. At least that's what I'm predicting. Let's see next week. Other things I'm predicting. I'm still sticking with my we meet Athena in this season. So that's my general thing I still have. But specifically for next episode, like I said, we get the Nereid warning Percy about the gifts and telling him to go to Santa Monica when he goes to LA. Then the fates, and then we're gonna go to Denver. I have no idea how we're gonna get to Denver, probably with the train. There we will make an Iris message to camp, see how they're holding up. We're gonna meet Ares. And he buys us cheeseburgers because, remember, the title of the episode is A God Buys Us Cheeseburgers. Which actually, did you know there was a question about this chapter title on Jeopardy once? When I saw it, I was like, oh my god, I know this question. Back to my predictions. They're gonna go to Waterland to retrieve Ares' shield. And I also think that Waterland we're still gonna go to the Tunnel of Love, and either it has a different name or it is more extravagant than in the books, because it looked more fancy in the trailers and everything. We will also meet Hephaestus. I don't know if the kids are going to meet Hephaestus or just we will see that he's somewhere like last episode with Hermes. We're gonna have a one-on-one of Grover and Ares because it has been teased by Arian that Grover and Ares will have this one-on-one scene, and I think it will be now, so now or never. We have a lot of Percy and Annabeth bonding, since in all the scenes of Waterland we saw so far, it was just the two of them. I think there will be a different trap than in the books. It looks like a golden throne, and in mythology, this golden throne was made by Hephaestus for Hera as a gift, in quotation marks, because actually it's like a revenge because Hera threw Hephaestus off of Mount Olympus. And the story goes, if you once sit down in it, you can never stand up again. And maybe this is what those golden threads covering Percy were, like turning him into gold or like holding him down so he can't stand up ever again. And I'm not sure, maybe we'll get spiders, maybe Annabeth has to defeat some spiders to save Percy, I don't know. Or we will let the spiders go completely. We'll see about that. And we will end with Ares managing to sneak the children onto the truck of animals on the way to Las Vegas. Easter egg wise, I didn't find a lot of Easter eggs. I only this thing isn't really an Easter egg, it's more like foreshadowing, which is like the whole Pan's storyline unfolding in the next 3 books. Mostly Sea of Monsters and Battle of the Labyrinth, but also a bit of Titan's Curse, so we're gonna get some of this, I think. So my thoughts and feelings I didn't really cover in the recap. The first thing I realized was when they showed young Percy in the pool, I think they forgot to put in contacts, because if I'm not completely blanking, Percy has in the books and also in the show bluish greenish eyes, and I know the actor who plays young Percy has brown eyes, and in that first scene he also has brown eyes instead of blue eyes, but as we cut to the dream sequence he has the bluish greenish eyes again. So maybe I'm mistaken, but it looked like that to me. But it's like not a big deal. It's just eye colors. In general, it was a really good episode. I don't think it was my favorite. I still think number 3 is my favorite, but the only quarrel I have is I think it was too short. Like I said, the target audience are middle graders, so of course it's going to be shorter. I love that we had a lot of bonding and backstory, and it didn't really feel that exposition heavy. It felt like normal conversations people would have. I mean, in general, this series where people say, oh my god, it's so much exposition. First of all, these are like the first few episodes of what's hopefully going to be a 5-season series, at least. And second of all, if you would plunge into this world of the mythical things, wouldn't you want like a lot of exposition? I'd rather know everything and everyone before I even step foot into camp or like start training, because I'd like to be prepared for things. Thank you. I also love the parallels between Percy and Sally at the beginning and Percy and the Nereid at the end, because also in the book, if I remember correctly, Percy compares the voice of the Nereid to that of his mom's. So, nice. And we also see Percy's fatal flaw showcased, which is loyalty. That's why he wants to protect his friends and not abandon Annabeth at the top of the arch. He would rather like sacrifice himself because his chances of survival were like lower to begin with since he was poisoned than the other two's. I also love the parallel between Annabeth wanting help for Athena and not receiving it, and Percy not really wanting to ask Poseidon for help and yet still unexpectedly getting it. There's also something interesting if you compare the parenting styles of Sally at the beginning, trying to teach her son that's important to like for him to survive in the water basically, and later Poseidon through the Nereid like more gently teaching him. That's how you like how different the priorities and approaches from humans and gods are. These are all my thoughts and feelings on this episode. Let's continue with some trivia trials. For last week's questions, the first one was about Medusa's sisters. In mythology, Medusa had 2 sisters. Together they were known as the Gorgons. what are their names? Their names are Stheno and Uriel. We actually met them in the books. In the second Heroes of Olympus book, Son of Neptune, Percy also encounters them. And the second question was about Bear McCreary, who is nominated for 2 Grammys in 2024, so this year. The question was, for which project are these nominations? The project is God of War Ragnarok, and the categories are Best Immersive Audio Album and Best Score Soundtrack for Video Game and Other Interactive Media. The Grammys are on the 4th of February, so let's hope he wins, because I listened to the soundtrack and it also is amazing. Now on to this week's questions. The first one is about Mother. Yes, it is about Echidna, because if Echidna is the mother of all monsters, who is the father of all monsters? And the second question is, on Threads, Rick Riordan revealed what the name of the dog playing the Chimera is. So this little chihuahua we saw in one scene. Do you know it, or should we put you in a corner? That was a hint, by the way. As always, you can DM me your answers on Instagram at Delphi_Dispatches_pod, and we will reveal those answers next week. Now, on to mythical music. I was really struggling today to find like a fitting song, because there wasn't really a song featured in today's episode. So I thought we should just include the track Mother of Monsters from the official Percy Jackson soundtrack. I must say this is hands down one of my favorite tracks on the soundtrack album, and it fits so perfectly. I mean, of course, it was literally composed for this episode, but it's awesome. And that concludes another adventure with Delphi Dispatches. Thank you, Demigods, for joining me on today's quest. Please consider subscribing to the podcast. And if you want to connect with me on Instagram, just follow at Delphi_Dispatches_pod for updates and a fun community. This is Martina, signing off until next time. And remember, the real world is where the monsters are.